It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We do have a great show for you. What else would you expect? But please hit that share button and let's get it out growing and growing larger and larger. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and all our friends at MyPillow. This week, MyPillow is offering their 6-piece towel set in 7 different colors for just $40. 7 towels for just $40. That's a 63% savings, and all you have to do is use the access code Dr. Duke, D-R-D-U-K-E. Today, we are starting in Colorado, one of those states that's kind of, as it becomes bluer and bluer and let's be clear, higher and higher, starts edging up higher and higher on our list of really goofy places for public schools. We've got Virginia, we've got California, we've got Massachusetts and New York, and Colorado is being represented here very amply, where an elementary school has announced they plan to teach kindergartners, 5-year-olds, the importance of disrupting the nuclear family. That's right, kid, start pulling your social justice bona fides. You're 5 years old. Enough of this playtime. Time to start fighting back against your own family while embracing and affirming the LGBT community.
And it's the kindergarten and first grade team together who are all excited about sharing all their plans to participate in like Black Lives Matter at School Week, or it's actually Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. I gotta get the full title. And again, this year they're gonna participate. So they wrote, our kindergarten and first grade team is so excited to engage in the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action again this year. On this page, because they had a whole flyer, you will find some information around the principles that will guide our instruction. On the next page, you will find more information on the books and conversations we will engage in. And so, it starts. Black Lives Matter guiding principles. Restorative justice. In bold, it's the commitment to build a beloved and loving community that is sustainable and growing. Empathy is one's ability to connect with others by building relationship built on mutual trust and understanding. And a world care habit. Loving engagement is the commitment to practice justice, liberation, and peace. Shall I go on?
Yeah, and so can we get to the point now where I'm going to do it? Black Lives Matter, the international organization, is a scam, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever nice thoughts and warm fuzzies you have about the Black Lives movement, if you can separate all that looting and pillaging and all that nonsense, think about what's happening here. Black Lives Matter, really, to what degree is it even about black people anymore? I mean, look at what they're telling you now, that destroying the nuclear family is one of their major point of contact. One of the things that the high-ranking international BLM wants to do is decenter nuclear families, moms, dads, and kids. This is some sign of evil that the patriarchy and whiteness has foisted upon us. And meanwhile, in the news, they're in the news right now, Black Lives Matter, $60 million sitting there in accounts, and we don't know who has control over them. We have no idea who's in charge of that money. It's one of the great grifts of the 21st century, completely out of control and unsupervised. And so you've got now school administrators at an elementary school in Colorado, who are so excited about wasting a week of your kid's education in kindergarten to get them hooked up to this ridiculous organization.
And if you continue to read more of the principles, because I want to read the principles to this Black Lives Matter so I can be guided, as they say, 3 main ones include black families, black villages, black women. So black families creates a space that is family friendly and free from patriarchal practices. How do the black men feel about this?
There are none in the film, right? And let me underscore that. You're theorizing with Black Lives Matter places where black women can have families without men. It's called Today, right? It's called Today. 8 out of 10, almost 8 out of 10 black babies are born without men in the household. And you're worried about making sure that that number grows?
Well, it's a guiding principle for black women is the building of women-centered spaces free from sexism, misogyny, and male-centeredness. Or males at all, I guess they can add
evidently.
That. And then black villages is the disruption of Western nuclear family dynamics and a return to the collective village that takes care of each other. Black women is the building of women-centered spaces, and then they add on to it even in that same point. It's like they double pointed the black women part.
So villages won't have any men in them.
Apparently not. But at the very last point that they include in here is unapologetically black.
Unapologetic.
Except for, I guess, if you're a male, you have to be apologizing. But
That's
it's
exactly
the
right.
affirmation that Black Lives Matter and that our love and desire for justice and freedom are prerequisites for wanting that for others.
Yeah.
These principles are the blueprint for healing and do not include, nor do they support ignoring or sanitizing the ugliness and discomfort that comes with dealing with race and anti-race issues.
It's just love. It's an act of love, Black Lives Matter says. All that hatred, segregation, and destruction, all that pulling apart families and histories, all of that patriarchal garbage, they do it, Katie, because they love.
They do. And for all of you out there saying, how dare they try and teach this to the 5, 6, and 7-year-olds? Well, they have a frequently asked questions page on their website because you may have some questions about why they would be teaching this. Question 1, isn't teaching BLM teaching politics? Dr. Duke, your response first?
It is not teaching politics. It is imposing politics, and particularly nasty racial politics, on kids too young to understand.
Incorrect. What they say is our goal is not to teach children what to think, rather to expose them to different perspectives and opinions so that they learn to value and respect diversity.
What opinion outside of Black Lives Matter's crusty opinions do you expose that? Give me an example of Black Lives Matter diversifying in the name of inclusion. No, it's the same garbage all the time.
Their response here is, as recent as this June, the U.S. government identified that supporting Black Lives Matter is not political.
Oh, well, Joe Biden said so. Well, there you go.
And from an article they linked in here, they say, from this article, the Black Lives Matter movement concerns itself with issues such as racism, which are not inherently aligned with a single political party. Except of what they have. Anyway, but another question you may have is, you're talking about 5, 6, 7-year-olds. Are all of these topics age appropriate?
Of course they're not, but let's see what Black Lives Matter has to say.
While these topics are big and ones we're still learning about as adults, we believe it's never too early to start to talk to kids about race. A growing body of research is finding that children can learn about and internalize racial bias as young as 2 to 4. So I guess the 2-year-olds better get in on it.
If you're teaching kids Black Lives Matter, you are internalizing hateful, racist rhetoric in your children.
And hey, they just want to teach children that it's okay. It is okay to notice and talk about race while valuing and respecting differences.
Where is the, can you give me an example of respecting difference from what they believe? Just one. Give me just one example where they respect somebody who doesn't believe what they believe.
I don't have any, but hey, in the next story, we're going to talk more about this, so stay tuned.
Are you a fan of the show? Consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation of $99 a year keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to pledge your support and receive our signature tumbler as a token of our appreciation. We've got much more to come. Stay with us.
Sticking right at the Centennial Elementary School, we're going to continue this conversation because in addition to just, Black Lives Matter week and all that and learning about it, hey, we're also going to have Families of Color playground nights. Ooh, so only those families of color get to play on the playground on special nights. And that, of course, brought on a little bit of commentary from the one, the only Manhattan Institute senior fellow, Christopher Rufo, who has been basically the main driver of exposing all of this nonsense in our schools across the nation. So he's been reporting on this insanity for a couple years now, and we thank him for all the work he's done and uncovered. Now, he tweeted out, Denver Public Schools now promoting racially segregated playtime for equity. And then obviously you can see the photo, and they put it on their poster board out there, out front, so everyone can see when the special Families of Color playground night is. And so Rufo decided to talk to the school specifically and went directly to them and said, hey, why are you doing this? Well, when you talked to Denver Public School spokesperson Scott Pribble, he actually he confirmed the events. And obviously, in his response, he had to let everyone know his pronouns are he, him, his. So we can tell where this direction is going in his overall response. Now, Pribble said that the events were created after several black families had requested a space of belonging. And he said some of these families shared with us that since the only time many of them see one another is at drop-off and pickup times, we host some events where black families can meet one another, connect with one another, and share their experiences about the school with one another. My question is, why can't we just do that with all the families?
Yeah, well, because you know when one white family gets there and shows up, it just ruins the good time for everybody else. When you bring that little 5 and 7-year-old kid of yours to the park and it's a black only night, I mean the white supremacy just starts to. Those 7-year-olds are knocking kids down. The 5-year-olds kicking people in the nads. I tell you, this is what happens when you unloose white people in black spaces. They just go all mental, right? Rufo actually found monthly events are based on critical race theory principles. Surprise, surprise. Facebook post from September said, quote, "In this first session, we will introduce the equity book study and equity discussions, which will alternate each month." Can you imagine taking your kids to the park and while they're waiting to slide and climb, memo, you better get a new name for monkey bars. That's going to be a problem.
They don't even allow monkey bars on a lot of places because they're too dangerous.
Good. Just the name monkey bars is a hate crime.
How are you supposed to do an
it's
apple
a
turnover?
Hate crime.
You do an apple turnover. Anyone else with me? Apple turnovers on the monkey bars? No, just me maybe. Fine.
So are we surprised, Katie, that critical race theory is behind this? It also added that the group would meet the first Wednesday of each month and that it would be reading, quote, "How We Show Up, Reclaiming Family, Friendship, and Community," unquote, quote, by Mia Birdsong. In alternating months, we will also discuss another resource topic or equity-related theme. The first month, we will focus on getting to know each other and learning about how we contribute to equity at Centennial.
Isn't that so? Now they're having special nights of the month, so only the minority parents of color families can show up. But then all day during school, they're also spending all the time talking about equity and how this can happen.
How we exclude white people. Yep, that's
and yet
right.
None of this. Well, anyway, at least we have a Denver law professor, Dave Koppel, who said that the events are likely illegal. He tweeted out, "In violation of Colorado Constitution Article 9, Section 8, nor shall any distinction or classification of pupils be made on account of race or color." So, let's see what happens in Denver. The Mile High City.
Let's keep in mind that Denver is not exactly the hood, right? You remember last summer because of the outrage, I tell you, where the All-Star game, the baseball All-Star game was taken away from Atlanta because of voting irregularities and given to Denver. It was immediately pointed out that the number of black people in Atlanta was almost 50%, and surrounding areas of Atlanta, 50%, and what is it, about 9% black, a little bit less than that, actually more like 7% black in Denver. So you got 7% representation here of people of color, of black people of color, and that means you've got a huge number of whitey that you've excluded. So you excluded what? 70, 75, 80% of your students and parents from this? All in the name of what? Christopher Rufo is correct, our good lawyer is correct, common sense is correct. This is not legal. And yet, because you guise it under Black Lives Matter theory and critical race theory, suddenly discrimination is hot. You know, it's like one of those hot not things. The Constitution, not hot. Discrimination, hot. Segregation, hot. Whitey, not hot. I mean, it is absolutely predictable.
Today's show is sponsored by Clean Start Hand Sanitizer. For an odor-free foam hand sanitizer that lasts 2 hours and provides 19 refills, visit freedomproject.com/clean. That's KLEEN to order yours today.
Well, it appears that the University of New Hampshire is getting in on the dumb. Well, students in the Introduction to Language and Social Interaction course had to complete an assignment. involving the recording of other people that they thought would say something racist, ableist, homophobic, or just using microaggressions. So the assignment states they were told, you're a student in this class, you have to call in someone on their ableist, racist, or homophobic use of language for microaggressions or an act of racism towards a person of color, homophobia against LGBTQI+, or ableism against a disabled person. And if you could read there what it said, the grammar alone for this is incredible. But ignoring that all, the assignment for the course specifies that students must also record that interaction in order to get their credit for it, while clarifying to get permission before doing so. So, you're a student in this class, and you have to go record someone you think is going to be racist, homophobic. What again is the purpose of this in learning terms?
Well, it's not.
What is the
purpose is activism, not confrontation is what it is. And listen to this. Listen to the outstanding and ridiculous rules that the teacher mandated when these kids are forced out there to confront people. Assignment said that the students must, quote, remember to say, you know they mean well and are a good person. So I'm going to, if with your permission, I'm going to record you being racist. But I want you to know that we know you think you're a good person even though you're not. It gets even worse than that. Students are instructed to, quote, give their target an alternate way of expressing themselves that doesn't marginalize or oppress. So in other words, correct their language. When you call them out for their microaggression, then you got to give them an alternative. How about you say it this way instead? Quote, research your proposed alternative to make certain it itself is not oppressive. So don't oppress the oppressors with your own oppression, because you will fail if you tell someone to say something racist or sexist or homophobic, even by accident. So Google it. There you go. That's what we're spending all that money to go to college in New Hampshire for. Just Google it. Get advice. Now you may check. No, you may not check with me. Oh, by the way, I'm the teacher getting paid fat stacks to teach you idiots. Don't you dare ask me what I want you to do. Don't ask for my information. Don't ask for my help, because this is all on you, Whitey.
Okay, well, you didn't finish that statement. You may not check with me. It's your responsibility to research it and learn how to find these things out. And I'm guessing that's via the Google it.
Yeah, Google.
So Google it, research it, get advice, but not from me, the teacher, who's assigning you to do this assignment.
If I end up at just doing a random race search, I end up at www.kkk.com, and I follow their advice. You could be down with that, sister?
Yeah, apparently. Now, here's the deal. This assignment isn't the first iteration of this exact assignment, according to the lovely Libs of TikTok Twitter account. If you've not seen the Libs of TikTok Twitter account, probably stay off of it, because it's a rabbit hole of just ugh. Or you can just watch Dr. Duke when he does his Trending Left segment, because that's where a lot of stuff comes from.
Oh, yeah.
The Libs of TikTok. All right, well, they tweeted out a similar assignment from another iteration of this course. So it was basically the same assignment done last fall that they're doing now in this spring. And the course description, again, for the overall course, not just this assignment, this overall course says the purpose of what's it called? Introduction to Language and Social Interaction, to give students an overview of interpersonal communication processes and the ways in which they influence the formation of identity, personal relationships, gender, interactional patterns, conflict, culture, and power.
So in order to pass this class, it is mandated you go up to random people, accuse them of racism, confront their racism, give them alternatives to their own racism, and then tell them that you're going to expose their racism, but have a nice day and thanks for participating. How many punches in the face is this going to relent in? Ultimately, if somebody came up to you, Katie, and wanted to do this, what would your response be?
It all depends on the circumstances.
Evasive, but effective. It's time for some real education. You know, that kind of thing that used to happen before the schools were taken over by all these idiots. Today we're looking at classical mythology, some of the great images and stories of classical mythology, but with a twist, right? We're not looking at them in their classical context. We're not looking at the classical world's understanding of these mythologies. We are looking at how modern and postmodern man deals with this. How are those stories that have been with us for all this time, how are they reified? There's a fancy word for you. How have they been appropriated and employed in postmodern and modern context? So take a look at our image for today. One of the great stories of the classical world, Leda and the Swan. This particular version of the story, if you close in on the picture, it's actually a painting by the Polish artist Jerzy Hulwitz, 1928. He was a Polish painter, draftsman, and printmaker, died in 1941. He was an expressionist, belonged to the group known as Bund, which was close to the German group Die Aktien and Die Strom, and he made many exhibitions all around and in Poland and abroad, also specialist in woodcut illustrations. Leda and the Swan, of course, is the modern depiction of an ancient story, a subject from Greek mythology. The story tells how the ancient Greek king of the gods, Zeus, in the form of a swan, seduces and ultimately rapes Leda, and that's what's taking place there. In some version of the myth, Zeus rapes Leda, and one of the children that Leda bore was a beautiful daughter who would become to be known as Helen of Troy. So in this rape, in this the inability of Zeus to contain his lust, he takes the shape of a great big swan. He violates this innocent queen. She ends up giving birth to 4 children, 2 demigods, Castor and Polydeuces, children of the gods, and 2 girls, Clytemnestra and Helen. Clytemnestra would go on to be the very wife of King Agamemnon. So you see Helen of Troy, right? And then Clytemnestra and Agamemnon. So what you're being told here in this picture, and it really is kind of a nice depiction of this, from this one simple act that seems random and violent, these 4 children are born. In this moment, the seed is planted, right, for what would become the great tragedy of the classical world, the destruction of Troy. 20 years, many of the Greeks would be away from home. Many of them would have died on the plains of Troy. 10 years, the war itself would take before Troy was brought down. All of that horror that would completely define Western culture in many aspects was planted by this one act of divine lust. Very interesting take on an ancient classic.
All right, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, the shout out goes to Bob from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Bob, thank you for supporting us. And that wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Katie. He's Dr. Duke.
Till next time, stay educated.